All right, we have Roger Stone, noted but New York Times bestselling author, longtime Republican political consultant, and former campaign advisor to Donald Trump, and the only person, as you heard Ted Cruz in the clip I just played you, the only person quoted on the record in this incredible National Enquirer story. Roger, good morning. Happy Easter. Thanks for getting up early for us on a Sunday like this.
Frank, great to be with you.
Roger, I don't know where to begin. Clearly, the Cruz campaign has blamed you for everything except kidnapping the Lindbergh baby. And everybody is acknowledging, even the New York Times in its article on this case yesterday, that this attempt to dig up these Cruz extramarital affairs was initially brought about by the Rubio campaign. Why are they making you the guy that everyone's deciding to blame?
Well, I guess it's somehow an attempt at deflection. Look, Frank, you've been in politics a long time. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. So I guess I have a brand, perhaps a brand for rough and tumble politics, a brand for the dramatic. But in this particular case, the private detectives who are specifically cited in the article in the National Enquirer were actually working for and paid by Marco Rubio. Now, I believe the Rubio campaign elected not to use this information. I believe it was collected as a hedge against some of the allegations about Rubio's personal life. And in the end, they elected not to use it. And of course, before you know it, he was out of the race. I believe in this particular case, the private detectives got paid twice. They got paid once when they did the original work for Rubio. That they got paid twice when they, on their own, went ahead and sold it to the National Enquirer. The National Enquirer would acknowledge that they pay for information they can confirm. But in this case, I can tell you categorically, I did not plant the story with the National Enquirer. And then blaming Donald Trump or his campaign is somewhat outrageous. I never discussed this with Donald or with anyone in his campaign. All I did do when a longtime reporter from the National Enquirer, who I used to know when she was at the New York Post and after that at the U.S. Daily Mail, the U.K. Daily Mail, called and asked for a comment, and I was happy to give a comment on the record, which I still believe to be accurate. If this is proven, it would be highly problematic for Ted's image, since it is built around his moral superiority and his appeal to evangelical Christians.
Now, so that's a great point. I want to get into the facts of the story with you in just a minute, but first, why should we care about who Ted Cruz is sleeping with? I've been very open about my problems with married women over the years. You know, you've certainly been known for a libertine lifestyle when it comes to, romantic liaisons, to say the least. Why should we care who Ted Cruz is sleeping with?
Well, neither you nor I are running for president.
Right, thank goodness.
And he holds himself out as a moral exemplar. And I think it's the hypocrisy, once again, that is problematic here. Where's his lawsuit? Where's his $100 million lawsuit against the National Enquirer? The National Enquirer has been sued before, in most cases unsuccessfully. But this is very much like the John Edwards case, when the Washington Post, who is chasing this story, or the Associated Press, who is chasing the story. I mean, the dirty little secret here is this isn't just the National Enquirer. Every major media organization in the country is pursuing this particular story, and they are well familiar with the names. And you have to wonder whether, for example, one of these women, who Cruz was allegedly involved with, leaves his campaign, goes to the campaign of Carly Fiorina, and then shortly thereafter, Ted Cruz pays Carly Fiorina's campaign $500,000. Now, Ted despises Carly, and Carly despises Ted. What's the $500,000 for? Can you say hush money?
Right. That's exactly what one of the callers alleged last hour. So in terms of this story, the National Enquirer believes they have 5 women that Cruz has had these liaisons with. And one of these women actually, ironically, works for the Trump campaign. Now, she has denied this. Is that right?
Well, her denial seems to be very carefully parsed. I hope she will come forward and tell the entire truth. It's obviously you couldn't make this stuff up. It's quite a twist and turn in the story, but I'm hopeful she'll come forward and tell the entire truth. Two of the women who are alleged in this story, I must tell you, Frank, I had never heard of or had never heard that particular allegation until the National Enquirer called me. So the idea that I was informing them on behalf of Donald Trump or the Trump campaign is false. Look, he specifically called me a henchman. Henchmen get paid. I'm not paid anything by the Trump campaign, so therefore, by definition, I can't be a henchman. He also went on to say that I copulate with rodents. Knowing what a couple of these women look like, I actually think he's the one who's been copulating with rodents.
Now, Cruz says you have 50 years of dirty tricks behind you. And the Cruz supporters have been quick to point out every political scandal, or pseudo-scandal that you've been involved in or alleged to be involved in. And Donald Trump did, after, this Cruz super PAC posted these nude photos of Melania. Donald Trump did tweet, "Be careful, Ted, or I'll spill the beans on your wife." Now, could you understand where the Cruz people are coming from? Look, Roger Stone has a long history of dealing with this stuff. And this story comes out just a couple of days after Donald Trump tweets that pseudo threat against Heidi. I mean, some people might say, that might be too much of a coincidence. What do you say to those people drawing that conclusion?
The scandal doesn't pertain to Heidi. I presume that Trump is talking about Heidi's mental breakdown and the fact that she was found by the local police wandering and disoriented, and they determined that she was a threat to herself. Or maybe they're talking about the fact that Heidi, with her husband posing as a conservative Republican, was the top aide to Condoleezza Rice at the National Security Council prior to going to the U.S. Trade Representative's office, where she was the top aide for Robert Zoellick, who then took her to Goldman Sachs. You know who they are, Frank? They're the bank that you and I bailed out. And, of course, Goldman then subsequently gave $1 million illegal sweetheart loan to Ted Cruz's Senate campaign, which he lied about, claiming that the infusion in cash into his campaign came from his wife cashing in her retirement. That's a lie. Now, all of that pertains to Heidi. None of this pertains to Heidi. This has to do with Ted Cruz and his zipper.
And if you were to guess, putting on your political strategist hat, what happens next? What does this do to the dynamics of the race? Where does the story go from here?
Well, either one of these women comes forward, or a media organization gets third-party corroboration. Let's say the brother of one of these women comes forward and says, yes, that she told the entire family that she had something going with Ted. Also, I think there's some parsing here. There are some of these women may have had sexual activity with the senator that did not constitute intercourse. So now we're going to go into a Bill Clinton-type cul-de-sac to try to define exactly what is sex. I mean, is oral sex in a closet at the Republican State Convention, does that constitute sex or not?
A lot of the Cruz defenders and the Trump opponents have pointed out that the National Enquirer is a newspaper that has endorsed Donald Trump. They point out that its publisher is a friend of Donald Trump's. Is this an instance of a friend of Trump's maybe trying to use his newspaper as an opportunity to help him silence Trump's last remaining political foe?
And risk a $100 million lawsuit?
Right.
I repeat, Frank, where's the lawsuit?
Right.
If Lyin' Ted's telling the truth, if Lyin' Ted is this is all a lie, I challenge him to sue. I threaten him to sue. I want him to sue. Sue immediately, because that would kind of get people to say, "Oh, okay, Ted is obviously telling the truth." He won't sue. Why won't he sue? It won't cost him anything. He's a lawyer himself.
Well,
Where's the lawsuit?
particularly in this era of Hulk Hogan getting a $140 million judgment against Gawker, it would seem juries have little tolerance for this kind of tabloid-style journalism.
Yeah, so to be absolutely clear, Ted Cruz won't sue because the allegations are largely true. That's why he won't sue. And in the debate, my guess is that's what he'll be told if he wants. Not debate, but I guess we have a town hall coming. I'm sure that's what Trump will say. If you're unhappy with David Pecker and the National Assembly, sue him. But if you don't sue him, it'll be a sign to all of us that you're bluffing, which he is bluffing.
Is there a concern that Donald Trump, I mean, look, he's been accused of this by everybody, including the candidates that are no longer in the race, that he's kind of debased the campaign for the presidency and he's made it a more vulgar exercise than it should be, running for the powerful, highest office in the land. Tell me how you view that. Has Donald Trump...
I guess that's why hundreds of thousands of new people who have never bothered with the country club Republican Party are showing up to vote in the primaries, because he's debased the primaries. Maybe they're attracted by that debasement. It just doesn't make any sense. The people who say that, I hate to sound like Trump, are losers. That's why they're saying it, because they lost. I'll tell you what's worse than debasing the contest. It's boring the voters. And his opponents have largely done that, trying to feed us the same failed policies we've had for 30 years. In other words, everything remains exactly the same. Trump is running against the candidates of the status quo. They can sound different. They can try desperately to sound different, but Ted Cruz is a George Bush Republican, supported NAFTA, supported TPP. You like spending under George W. Bush? Ted Cruz wrote that plan. You like our current immigration policies? Ted Cruz wrote those plans. So he's a fast talker. He does sound like Mr. Haney on Green Acres. That's unavoidable. And he does look like the late Al Lewis, Grandpa Munster. Those are just facts. If he doesn't like it, maybe he'll sue me too.
Final question, and we're talking with Roger Stone, who in addition to being a friend of Donald Trump for decades, he's the author of many, many best-selling books. His two most recent ones are Jeb and the Bush Crime Family and the Clintons' War on Women. I've picked up both. Both raise a lot of thought-provoking points that have not been brought up elsewhere. I recommend both. But final question, Roger, Donald Trump's on the front page of the New York Post and on the front page of the New York Times this week talking about policy. He says Japan and South Korea need to start paying for more of their own defense. He says if these countries want America to keep providing for their defense, they need to pay some of the bills in order for America to keep doing that. I find myself agreeing with a whole bunch of that, and I think a lot of Americans who aren't even necessarily Republicans would agree with the same thing. Is that going to be an issue that helps him over neocon Hillary in the general?
This is something he's been saying for 30 years. And I think, yes, people are tired of Uncle Sam being taken for a sucker. And it's time for our allies to pay their fair share.
All right.
This is something on which Trump has been consistent for 30 years.
That's for sure. Roger Stone, thank you very, very much. You can check out Roger's work at stonezone.com. You can buy his books on Amazon or elsewhere, stonezone.com. Roger Stone, the man Ted Cruz and the Ted Cruz crowd is blaming for this National Enquirer story. Roger Stone says if it's not true, let him sue. As Barry Farber would say, to be continued.